Rishi Sunak gave his first big interview of the year this weekend. It was with Laura Kuenssberg, and it got pretty uncomfortable.
Were you registered with a private GP, and are you still?
Yeah, but my dad was a doctor. I grew up in an NHS family.
Wasn't my question. It's really straightforward. Were you registered with a private GP?
I mean, as a general policy, I wouldn't ever talk about me or my family's healthcare situation. But again, it's not really relevant to this. What's relevant is the difference I can make to the country.
Well, hang on, Prime Minister. I think there is huge public interest in the decisions that you make. And actually, one of your predecessors, who I know you admire very much, Margaret Thatcher, she said very openly that she decided to use her right as a free citizen to spend my money in my own way so that I can go on in the day at the time with the doctor I choose and get out fast. She was perfectly happy and probably proud to talk about the decision she made. Why wouldn't you tell people if you use private healthcare?
Well, I mean, it's just a personal choice. It's about healthcare. I think is somewhat that is private. But I think what people care about is, am I going to make a difference on the thing that they care about? When it comes to the NHS, I mean, I grew up in an NHS family. I said my dad was a GP, my mum was a pharmacist,
and I think my
track record matters more than these things. But what I would say is that I want to make sure that we do have fantastic healthcare for everybody.
And you've made that
claim. The role of the private sector.
But
this is really important.
There is a public interest in the decisions that the Prime Minister makes for himself. Why won't you tell us whether or not you use private healthcare?
But again, it's a distraction from what the real issue is. And the real issue is, are we making sure that there's high quality healthcare available for the country? But when it comes to the private sector in general, we should be making use of the independent sector. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. For example, with elective surgery, one of the things we do need to do is actually be much more open to using the independent sector capacity that is available and putting power in the hands of patients to choose where they want to have that treatment. That's something that we need to do more of.
Are you registered with a private GP? My dad was a doctor. Interesting attempt at deflection, which didn't work very effectively there at all. Also, when you've got this Tory up there saying, the real issue is, are we delivering a decent service at the NHS? No, we are not. On that real issue, I'll agree that's the real issue. And what does the record say? They show that after 12 years, you have completely destroyed an NHS, which, by the way, you found in pretty good health. It was doing okay in 2010. It's only a disaster because of 12 years of Tory rule, because your guys have been in charge. Aaron, that is been thought of as a pretty awkward exchange with Rishi Sunak. Will he be particularly worried about that? Will his PR people be banging their heads on tables?
Possibly. I mean, they're polling so low at the moment. I mean, they're polling sort of mid-20s. So, are they losing voters in those polls because of what he's saying? I mean, probably not. I mean, it explains why they're so low already, right? My theory with Rishi Sunak, Michael, is that he's basically there to ensure the Tories get 30% at the next general election. I think anything more than that's a real accomplishment. And look, there could be a hung parliament, or there could be a very small Labour majority. It could be the Tories get 33, 34%, and that's a good result for them. Things are a long way away, 2 years away. But if you look at the fundamentals, Michael, I think 1.3 million people are seeing their mortgages up for renewal this year, inflation at 10%, public services crumbling. We're looking at a recession of 1% in 2023. All those fundamentals would suggest that the Tories are screwed. And so I feel like that matters more than an interview. However, there's clearly an argument to say, well, if you have a talented politician with a good policy offer, with good media and successful attacks on the Labour opposition, then yes, they could probably get a hung parliament, right? And right now, it doesn't look like Rishi Sunak's living up to that. His answer to me was more reminiscent of politics in sort of 2003 than 2023, where you could have somebody saying, it doesn't matter where you're from, it's about where you're going, which is how we ended up with David Cameron and George Osborne, two very, 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 very posh people with absolutely no credentials, almost no career outside of politics. I mean, David Cameron did some public relations stuff for Carlton, which became ITV. George Osborne literally never had a job outside of politics other than folding sweaters, I believe, at Selfridges or Harrods. And so this kind of idea that, we don't judge people on their background, we judge people on their ability and their skill and their competence. Actually, in the last 5 years, this stuff really does matter. People don't want to see a guy who's a multi-millionaire talk about how he's helping fix the NHS while himself using a private GP. And there's an interesting point by Laura Kuenssberg that Margaret Thatcher presented herself as a morally calculated, ethically driven politician, and she followed through on that. So she said things because she believed them, not necessarily because she thought they were popular. And there's an interesting contrast between her answer on that precise question and what Rishi Sunak said. I actually think the kinds of people that the Tories now need to win back, people that voted Conservative in the last general election over 45, I think if he said, look, I, as Prime Minister, need same day appointments from my GP, that's in the national interest. That's my view. People can obviously access healthcare as they see fit, but I think we should have an NHS publicly available to all. I think the kinds of voters they need to win back generally wouldn't mind as much compared to what they're seeing there, right? Which is a slippery, and I'm sure many of them would mind, but a lot more care about how slippery and evasive he seemed in the interview. And it does make you think, Michael, cast your mind forward what now? 15, 16 months to May 2024. We're going to have two party leaders who compulsively don't answer questions. And it's going to be a really remarkable experiment in anti-politics. And I wonder who wins from that exercise. If we have Starmer and Sunak both tending not to answer questions, both evading their record in and outside government, both trying to avoid the fact they've been deeply hypocritical on a number of things. Of course, we saw Keir Starmer basically support, but not support outsourcing when he was talking to Sophie Ridge on Sky News. You can see a situation where basically people say they're all as bad as each other, and yes, we get a hung parliament. But as it stands, Rishi Sunak's appearance, awful as it was, I think explains why the Tories are, in some opinion polls, 15 to 20 points behind.